Hi, my name is Nikki, and this is Interventionalist. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that I started to think about when I saw this Snow White drama happening because of the lead just talking so much shit about the movie and like the message in the original animated movie, and like kind of just shitting on the original Snow White and like what the strength that she had, like her kindness and her generosity and in her own way being a leader. And there's so much to that story that was empowering to women, and you know, sort of stripping it of that and then saying that like she wasn't inhabiting any sense of like female empowerment, and that it needed to have this sort of it needed to be rewritten to be more feminist and basically strip it of all that it was before for it to be meaningful and relatable to women. And it sort of drove me nuts reading that, because first of all, there's so much empowerment and in the softness of women. Like, I'm not saying that women who are like girl bossing aren't soft, but you know, the traits that we have that are just empathy and nurturing and kindness, and that is power. And that in itself, celebrating that aspect of womanhood, is just as large a part of feminism and just as vital as like our power and our intellect and like our work we do on a more, I don't know, maybe political, social level. But the intimate powers we have and like our ability to extend these really valuable and kind and caring emotions, like there's so much value in that, I guess. But when I was reading all this or seeing all this, all I could think about was how it's taking away something that I feel like is what makes fiction so special, and like media and so special, because it is unrealistic. It's like these people that we can see ourselves in, like this woman in Snow White who is like this kind, generous woman, and you can see yourself in her, and whether you want to learn from her or not, but you can see parts of yourself in her. And then it gives you a sense of hope. Like, look at her and what she accomplished. And also got to have this unrealistic love. And we don't, especially as like women, we don't get that often. The way that the world is, like I don't think we don't get to see a lot of like really unrealistically beautiful relationships, especially like same or heterosexual relationships that we can turn to and be like, wow, that is what I want, you know, like that is why so many women, and like we turn to fiction, and it's like we get to just indulge in this hope. It gives us hope. When you get to see something that you would want, one, it helps you learn what you value. Like relationships in general. I read this thing about how crushes are so important because it helps you learn what you value in another person. But when you don't get those experiences in real life, like good love, like that's almost unrealistically hopeful, you can watch it, you can read about it, you can watch it, and you can learn it through that. And like, how special is that? And to take that away, like that aspect, is just to take away so much of what makes it so comforting to watch, and like pulls at your heart in a different way, you know? Obviously, like the aspects that are more, I don't know, like what I think this woman who's kind of shitting on it is talking about, the more political sort of ideas of feminism. Like there is so much value in that, but I don't think it pulls at your like heart the same way as getting to see love, and like a healthy love, which so many of us want, and we just don't get to see in the real world. And so I guess it's just reminded me how important escapism is in fiction and in media. And if we take that away, we take away the hope that it can give you, that can give us, like that feeling when you get lost in a book, in a storyline, and it just makes everything sort of, when you're living in that world, like you just feel like you get to live a life that you wish was real. And it suddenly doesn't feel so, I don't know, it doesn't feel so far away. Like you get to experience all this good, and yeah, maybe you have to go back to your life after, and that can almost be harder when you become so attached and want that world, but at least you got to experience it through that. And it's escapism that can keep us sane. And it's why it's so important that in media, any kind of media, or like writing, that we can see ourselves. Because if you can see yourself and you can see someone experiencing things that you wish so badly you could, it kind of feels like you can live vicariously, and that alone is healing. But it also is hopeful, like, wait, it exists here, maybe it's not in real life, but it kind of gives you this little tinge of hope in your heart that maybe I can have it. You hold on to it, you know? And I like to believe that you can. One day, like, if it's written, maybe it'll be, like, but it also sets a standard. We don't get to see those standards as often in the real world, and, like, with love, and that we get to see in a fairy tale, and, like, why not get to indulge in that? And even if we never had it, like, what about in that moment when you get to empathize with it and feel it? How special is that? It's better than never feeling that emotion ever. And it's just why we can't take away the romantic aspects of fiction just in place of saying that, like, or just in place of more, I don't really know even how to, like, categorize it, like the feminism she's talking about. And I keep saying political, but I don't know if that's the right word. But I feel like there's, like, I'm going to just say it like this, but I don't really mean it, like sort of soft feminism and hard feminism, and, like, taking away this, or I guess, yeah, like trying to devalue or take away the power that comes with the softness that we have, women, anyone, that we have, and sort of trying to strip us of that, and any person in the world, like, to sort of reinforce this idea that being to be soft is weak, and it's not. And I think it's showing a powerful, like, woman, and like Snow White, who inhabits these really soft traits, but also is a leader. And she is looked to and respected, and you can have both, and you don't have to disregard this part of yourself for another. To be like a woman who is respected, and you don't have to give up on the idea that you can also have maybe this unrealistic love. And I think this is part of the reason, too, that, like, in religion, there's not a lot of modern religions, not modern, but, like, most dominant religions today, there's not female gods. And when you can't see yourself in, like, these really powerful figures that are worshipped and loved and respected, that's sort of devaluing in itself. Like, it kind of already gives this notion that you are inferior. And I guess that's just to speak to the idea that it's always empowering to see yourself in something, and to see yourself in any person that gets to be who they are, and they're celebrated for it, whatever they are, as long as they're not bad people, you know? Whether or not they're a softer woman who just wants to be married, or a wife, or just love, that you can see yourself in someone like that, and that is powerful, and that's what it's about being able to see yourself. Or like a woman, or anyone, like, or seeing someone who also is, maybe you relate more to a character that, like, is like, I don't care about love, I don't care about marriage, and getting to see that in another character. It's just being seen, being heard. And just, I don't think we need to take away all of the sort of unrealistic, or maybe like what we consider more silly aspects of, like, films. Maybe we're starting to sort of make romance kind of a silly thing that women don't need, but it's such a wonderful thing to embrace love and to have those emotions and to experience them, and it teaches you a lot about yourself, and you can learn so much about yourself and learn from fiction, from reading, from watching shows, like, because you're not experiencing those in real life. If you empathize with these, you learn a lot of lessons, and you learn about yourself, like how you can learn what you value in people. But we learn. I feel like a lot of people can relate to the idea that when you read something, you leave being like, oh, now I know. Like, I've just learned a lesson. Like, maybe I'll never do that because I've seen it, and like, if you are reading about or watching a show about a really toxic relationship, I think it can go two ways, where it influences you in a way that you sort of idolize it without even realizing it and seek out that unhealthy relationship, or you can spot it and then going forward, not like to have those warning signals in your mind or red flags that you wouldn't have had without enduring it in real life. Like, you kind of get a head start. And I can, like, speak to the idea that, like, it can sometimes be harmful, because I remember rereading a book years after I read it when I was 17, and it was super unhealthy relationship. Like, oh my God, I just have to say what it is, and I hate that it's this book. It's that book After. And I realized I got into a really bad relationship when I was 22. Like, something, I don't even... And then I reread that book, and I said, oh my God. Like, I like, recreated that. I don't know what it was. I didn't even know I internalized it, but it definitely, like, created this internal compass in me that, like, pointed me in a direction towards that relationship, like, super intense and, like, toxic, and all this emotional strife and anger, and love is just tension and fighting, and I sought that out without even realizing it, right? But now I read books after experiencing that, and, like, I read, like, for example, Song of Achilles. I think about this book a lot because it was a book I read after, and it gave me, like, this sense of hope that, wait, like, this is a good love, this is a nice love, and this is what I could seek out. And the other one was real, maybe this could be real too. And it just gave me a glimpse into what love could be outside of what I knew. And I haven't experienced that kind of love, and that's okay, but I wouldn't even have been able to conjure the idea of it, and that gave me a little bit of it. And I just, sometimes living in a fantasy, maybe living in this, like, little unrealistic fantasy, yeah, sometimes it's really bad, it makes you delusional, and, like, but it can also be healing, and you learn, like, you see yourself in books, and you can learn from it that way, but it can also feel empowering, but it can also teach you. And what I mean by that is, like, in different ways. Like, I guess I've read books that have taught me about forgiveness that I don't think I would have learned otherwise. Or, like, I didn't, it like, painted a picture right in front of me of a scenario that I could relate to, and then seeing it in another world made me see it in my real life. Like, I'm trying to give an example. For example, like, when I have felt bad about myself, or, like, a really shit person, or I've done something that I'm like, I just regret this, and, like, I've read a lot of horror after. When I was thinking about this, I realized, like, I would go through these phases where I read a lot of horror. And, like, a book that had really stuck with me is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or, like, Dracula by Bram Stoker. Like, and I think it was the idea that I felt like a villain, and I also felt like in Bram Stoker's Dracula, like, I felt like a villain, and so it was like, I don't know, like, I just sought that out, and I could, without even realizing it, I think, see myself in it, and that's why I sought it out. And then, like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like, I used to struggle a lot with this idea that I felt like I was two different people sometimes. Like, I could, like, when I get scared, I would, like, run away from relationships, and I would feel so guilty, and I still do, about leaving them, like, and so abruptly, because it's fucked up. That's not okay to do to people. And I think when I would go to horror, I wanted, like, I don't know, it's kind of like searching for justification that I wasn't that thing, or that there's other people like that, or maybe you can be loved in spite of it, like, the monster can, like, still find some kind of love. And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like, this split idea of yourself, and, like, being confused about which one you are. And I've always sought out things that made me feel seen, and giving a wide range in media and, like, fiction for people to relate to, like, the softer aspects of life, or the more, like, harder ones. It's just as important. There's just as much value in all of them, in creating characters of all types, and giving them a moment to be empowered, and you learn from it. And even if the empowerment is in a way that's like, oh, that's concerning. I guess maybe not empowerment, but, like, you highlight a character that's maybe doing things that are, like, concerning, or maybe not great, you still learn from that, and maybe you can take it and be like, wait, I might be doing stuff like that, and that's not good. You just learn. And I think that's why, like, when someone tells you their favorite book, it's kind of like saying, there's a piece of me in here, there's something in here that I am, or I want to be, and you're going to see it, or I want you to see it. I hope that you see it, that you understand, even if I might not look like these things, this is like, there's part of me in this. And it's so cool to know that if someone's favorite movie, their favorite book, is they see themselves in it. Or like, if you share with someone your own favorite stuff, like, for them to see you in it is like a vulnerable thing, but it's cool to be able to see ourselves in fiction in all the different ways. It gets weird for me to even say these books that I've seen myself in, because that tells you something about me that's kind of weird, I guess, uncomfy, but it's cool that I can even reference these to be like, no, like, I see myself in this, or I'm learning from this, and it's just, I guess there's just so much healing that can be done in fiction, and so much we can learn about ourselves and other people by seeing characters of all kinds and have the spotlight on them, and they don't always have to be one or the other, and they can be multifaceted, like Snow White. She's powerful and a leader, but she's also very soft, and to see both aspects of those and give people and women the ability to relate to one or the other or both, but to know that both are something to be celebrated and empowering. I don't know, it's just, especially relationships, because so many of us have so much to learn about them, and we go through our lives, a lot of the times I think not seeing healthy relationships, because relationships and love and attachments are probably one of the hardest things to figure out in your life. It's hard to, they're so emotionally ingrained in us, and like physical responses, like, I mean, quite literally, like the release of endorphins around people and the dopamine you get from someone can make you act a little loony, and it can make it hard to act in a way that you think will be more like safe or logical. And so like figuring out relationships and what a healthy one is can just be so hard, because when your body is so overcome with attraction for someone, you don't always make the best decisions, and suddenly the lines between what is healthy and not healthy blur, because it just feels good, and it's like what feels good and doesn't, and maybe what feels good isn't always healthy. But if you don't get to see that growing up, there's something to be said for being able to see it in a movie or a book, and just at least having it there. Yeah, it's harder to actually implement in real life. Like, it's a lot harder, but something to look to. And there's so much hope in that, and we just can't erase that hope, you know? In all regards. There's hope in like the feminism that I think this woman who's the lead in this movie is talking about, but there's also so much hope in like having a love. Like I said, like, love is so hard for us to figure out and see like healthy versions of, and it's so great to be able to fantasize about that and live in that fantasy for a minute. It's healing. Like, for example, there's not a lot of queer media where we get to see that in another relation, or we don't get to see like that healthy development of relationships. You just don't. I don't know a lot of like queer shows where like it's just the blossoming of a healthy relationship without a bunch of extra like drama. I don't know, like where the relationship can just exist and it's not completely centered around all the other like things that come with the baggage that can come with like being queer. And like a show I really liked, I talked about this last video, Heartstopper, because yes, there's that comes in. It's like really, it talks about that a lot, like the issues that can come with coming out and all of the fear and anxiety and the homophobia, but it also, you just get to see this like lighthearted, healthy relationship like developing between two people, like young people, but you don't get to see that a lot, just like happiness and like developing good communication, and to see that and to be able to be like, wait, that can exist. It doesn't always have to be so hard or like so much emotional strife. Like, it's just so refreshing, and then the hope that one day you can have it. And especially when I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm like unlabeled, pansexual maybe, but when I was growing up, it was shitty to never get to see myself in any of the like characters I watched or movies I watched growing up, or the things that I read, not often. And so like reading books that were like gay books when I lived in a life like back home when I was a kid, that I never got to see that and it was never celebrated. Getting the chance to like at least experience that in fiction was so hopeful. Like, it gave me so much hope, and it let me like have that experience, even if it was just vicariously, and it made me, and to know it was something celebrated, that maybe I wasn't going to be alone forever in this, and it wasn't always going to feel like a sin or like a crime, and there's people out there who also celebrate it. And there's just so, like, a saving grace. Like, fiction can be such a saving grace when we feel alone and when we don't understand ourselves or sometimes other people. I think maybe if you are having a really hard time understanding someone else, ask them what their favorite movie is or ask them what their favorite book is. And I think it'll show you a glimpse into who they are that you will otherwise won't find. The things they can't put into words or that they don't even realize they relate to, or makes them feel seen or heard, tells you something about them. And usually your favorite stuff, like there's aspects in the characters that make them feel seen or heard, or what they want to be, you know? Gives you hope. There's so much hope in it. And yeah, I guess there's really not much more I want to say on this, but there's so much power in all aspects of who we are and all of the things we want, and whether or not it's a softer thing, like you just want love and like to be a mother or a parent one day, or just to be sort of domestic, like there's power in that too, like as a woman, and there's power in also just wanting to kind of focus on a thing like a career, but you don't need to knock down one to have the other, and you don't need to sacrifice one for the other. Not everything, we don't have to sacrifice having a full, well-rounded life, or at least we shouldn't. And it's nice, I think, to live in a little fantasy world where you get to see that sacrifice not have to happen. Maybe it gives a little bit of hope that you won't have to make that sacrifice one day. And yeah, it's pretty cool to get to see yourself in something other than, I'm like rambling, but it's pretty cool to get to see yourself through someone else. It makes you feel seen in a way that really nothing else can. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say. Okay, well, I'll say that if you have any thoughts on this, or literally anything ever, I have a submissions page on my website, and you can submit in any kind of way, like writing, a picture of photography, a picture of your art, videos, voice recording. I would love to hear it. I'd be so honored to hear it. And yeah, please feel free to send anything. And if it's something that you want to share but you don't want other people to see, you can just send it to me, and I'll make sure I'll be the one to see it. You'll have one person in your audience. So yeah, okay, I guess that's all I'll say. And I hope maybe something in this can make you feel seen or heard. But if not, I hope you just enjoyed it. Okay. I guess I'll talk to you next time, in the next video. Bye.